Hello, my name is Alexio, and today we're going to be talking about Yellow Jackets. But before we start, I'm going to give you a warning. I will be discussing important plot points and events that happened in Yellow Jackets Season 3, so if you haven't yet watched the season, I suggest you click off because there will be spoilers ahead. After watching the Season 3 finale of Yellow Jackets, I wanted to come on here and share my thoughts and opinions about the finale and the entire season as a whole. This season of the Yellow Jackets was definitely the weakest season of the series in my opinion, and it was all because of the writing. I was still super entertained by the show, and I tuned in every Friday for a new episode, but there was a noticeable dip in quality that I saw in this season that I didn't see in the past two seasons. A lot of the things that happened this season felt rushed, anticlimactic, and poorly executed. For starters, we started off the season with the teenaged versions of the adult survivors in springtime, which was weird because in the season 2 finale, we saw that their cabin burned down and that they were left with no shelter and no food in the dead of winter. So you would think that with a finale like that the next season would start off with the girls and Travis descending into madness right off the bat, right? No. The season actually starts off with the girls cohabitating with each other and living peacefully in a village. They somehow miraculously survived the winter by building shelters, hunting animals, and no one else got eaten or sacrificed to the wilderness. As a viewer, it was pretty hard to believe that the girls had just powered through the bitter Canadian cold and came out the other side completely unscathed, but I just decided to suspend my disbelief and watch the rest of the season play out. Another thing that didn't make sense to me or felt rushed was Lottie's death. Lottie is revealed to be dead by the end of episode 4, and her death to me felt really odd and out of place. In that same episode where she died, she had two brief scenes. One where she spoke to Ty on the phone, and one where she was practicing an apology, presumably to Shauna, in the mirror. Neither of those scenes hinted at Lottie getting hurt or potentially dying. They just happen. And by the end of the episode, we find out that she's dead through a post on the Citizens Detective forum. And when Callie is revealed to be Lottie's killer in the season finale, it undermines everything the writers built up for Lottie in seasons 1 and 2. Lottie had this really ominous aura and mystery surrounding her in the first two seasons, and you kind of got the feeling that she was a huge deal and an important person. But then she ends up dying a season later in the most nonsensical and uncreative way imaginable. Callie had no justifiable reason to push Lottie down the stairs. She wasn't being threatened or being hurt. She just got offended by some words and decided to kill her, which feels very uncharacteristic for Callie. I would understand Callie's actions if maybe Lottie did something outlandish, like try to sacrifice her or imprison her in the basement, but none of that happens. The writers just kill Lottie off, one of the most interesting characters they have, and she doesn't even get a plain scene like the other Yellow Jackets did. And on top of that, the whole mystery behind her death is written so poorly. Callie is supposed to be suspended, yet she casually takes a trip to Lottie's hotel and returns back home without anyone noticing. She leaves the hotel basement after she kills Lottie, and when Misty goes to investigate at the same hotel, she doesn't check any cameras or security footage, even though there should have been some evidence of Callie being there. Shauna's DNA is found under Lottie's fingernails, not by the coroner, but by Walter. And when Misty, Walter, and Shauna go to investigate Lottie's death in Mr. Matthews' hotel room, the caregiver just allows them to be all through his room and Lottie's room without getting suspicious. The whole thing just seemed poorly thought out and not at all believable. Thais's whole story arc with Van was very unrealistic and purposeless. Ty and Van just go off having adventures and rekindling their romance. Meanwhile, Simone and Sammy are virtually written off the show entirely. Aside from a few throwaway lines here and there, and one quick scene in episode 5, they are never mentioned or heard from, even though Simone is Ty's wife and Sammy is her child. Also, we never really see Thaisa go to work or leave Van's side. They are joined at the hip in every scene. And I get that Thaisa would want to cherish every moment that she has with Van, but for her to completely abandon her marriage and ignore her responsibilities as a state senator just doesn't make sense. And when Van dies at the hands of Melissa in episode 9, Ty just takes her body and buries it in a random plot of land, and for some reason, she eats pieces of Van's heart. That send-off for Van was so bizarre and unneeded. Why would the writers have Ty bury Van in the dirt in a random area? Why wouldn't she fund a funeral or host a wake for the supposed love of her life? And why would the real Ty do something as barbaric as eating her lover's organ? Thaisa's whole storyline about her other self taking over fell flat because every time she was about to do something drastic, Van stopped her. So there wasn't any sense of actual danger with other Ty because she didn't actually do anything. Van's character is reduced to her just being Ty's sick girlfriend, and she isn't given any development or growth of her own. And her cancer diagnosis doesn't even end up mattering in the long run because she dies in episode 9 because of a knife wound. Adult Melissa gets away with killing Van, and she doesn't make an appearance in the finale, which was a choice, but I'm guessing the writers are saving the aftermath of that whole situation for the next season. Adult Shauna's storyline was frustrating to watch. She just went around assuming the worst in every situation and ended up distancing herself from her family in the process. Teen Shauna was even more frustrating to watch because she was just causing havoc and being a menace every time she was on screen. And I hate how everyone just bent to her will and acquiesced to everything she said because she could have easily been stopped. Like when she stole the gun from Nat in episode 9 and basically forced everyone to stay in the wilderness. They could have just jumped her because the majority of those girls wanted to go home. There were multiple opportunities where the other girls could have restrained Shauna or just flat out ignored her, but at every turn, they just allowed her to do awful things without repercussions. And Shauna's personality this season did a complete 360. She went from being quiet and reserved to being overbearing and just downright evil. And I get that her best friend died and that she lost her baby, but that isn't justification enough for why she was so wicked. She would just do awful things to the other characters and relish in their pain. It was hard to watch, and every time she showed up, I wanted someone to just whack her, but she had plot armor, so they couldn't. Teen Nat and Teen Travis barely interacted this season, even though we know that they're endgame, and Travis had nothing to do besides react to the chaos happening in the wilderness. Misty's whole storyline was basically about her solving Lottie's murder, and we learned nothing new about Walter or what his motives are. He's just as ominous as he was last season. But other than that, the writers did actually reveal a lot this season. We found out that Mari was the pit girl, we found out that Shauna was the antler queen, and we learned the origins of the man with no eyes. But there were still some more questions that needed to be answered, and they never were. Like, who burned down the cabin if it wasn't Coach Ben? Where did Crystal's body go? What friend was Javi talking about in season 2? Was it Hannah? Why was Coach Ben hiding in the caves when he could have been hiding in the same place that Javi was living in for weeks? Why was Lottie crashing at Shauna's house when it was revealed that she was living with her father the whole time? Most of the questions and concerns from season 2 were left untouched and unexplored, and it just seemed like the writers had no real plan of where to take the story next. Melissa's addition to the main cast felt out of place and added in randomly because before this season, Melissa was just a background character, but then they made her a huge part of the story when her survivor spot should have gone to a more interesting character like Akila or Mari. This entire season just felt like I was watching someone's weird AU fanfic. The mystery and the intrigue that was built up in season 1 and 2 was gone, and the show took a huge shift tonally. Like, the way this season was presented and shown was way different than in seasons 1 and 2. Like, I felt like I was watching a totally different show. The only thing that seemed to remain consistent were the amazing performances given by the cast. The adult timeline was all over the place and messy, and the team timeline was the most interesting part. And despite all the craziness going on in the writer's room, I still deeply love this show, and I hope the writers put on their thinking caps next season and remember the greatness they created with the first 2 seasons. Those were my thoughts on YellowJackets Season 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye!